love this chance to talk to you and talk about young leaders. It's one of my favorite things.
Yeah, I know. You have so much wisdom to share, and I'm really excited that we could go live together. All right, so today, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We are going to talk about leadership wisdom for next gen marketplace leaders with Mimi Chan. And if you don't know, you're listening to Cora Conversations. And I'm Yuli Lee with Cora Collective, and we're really excited that you're here. I'm going to share a little bit about Cora, and then I'll share Mimi's bio, which you have to be ready for it because it is an outstanding bio. And then we will go into just conversation and learn from Mimi what wisdom she has to share. So at Cora Collective, our vision is to create a kingdom culture of leadership
Mm.
that is generous and spacious for all Asian American Christian ministry and marketplace leaders across all generations. So our umbrella is quite huge, but we love serving all of y'all. And once a month, we go live, like today, with incredible guests to unpack real leadership lessons. And these are insights or challenges or breakthroughs that shape how we lead and help us become healthier leaders. And so today, like I said, I'm so excited to have my friend Mimi Chan on Cora Conversations. And let me just share a little bio about her. So, Mimi is an entrepreneurial marketeer with over 20 years of experience at Fortune 500 companies. After studying economics at Stanford University, Mimi found her professional passion creating award winning marketing programs, garnering the American Marketing Association's first Effie Award for Multicultural Marketing. She is the head of events at Amazon Books and was previously a director at AT&T, leading diversity, social media, and entertainment marketing. Mimi also co-founded Christians at Amazon at the end of 2019, and she grew it from a 10-person weekly prayer meeting to a community of around 4,000 employees. And she also volunteers with organizations like TEDx Oakland, Generosity Bay Area, and Faith and Work Movement. She's spoken about faith in the workplace and spiritual leadership at the 2024 Lausanne Congress, Oxford Said Business School, and companies like HSBC in Hong Kong. You can talk about books with her at goodreads.com/Mimi CY Chan, or find her traveling with a camera in hand. She does travel quite often and takes beautiful photos. And also, fun fact, she is on the advisory board for Cora Collective. So we are super, super blessed to have her speaking
Mm.
into the wisdom and strategy of Cora. So, Mimi, welcome. We're so excited you're here.
Oh, I'm so delighted to be here. Um, it's funny because when you take these different things on, right, you just don't know where the journey is going to take you. And so you end up in the most unexpected places. I'm like listening to you and thinking to myself, oh yeah, like all these memories came rushing back of like all these different things I've done in each of those roles.
Yeah.
But I think that's part of it is like you just kind of step through every door as it opens, right? And if you don't
Yeah.
try to over engineer your career, then God's going to take you to some places that are going to surprise and delight you. You would never even thought to have asked for.
Yeah. I love that about you that, you are really attuned to the Holy Spirit and you
Mm.
move where God wants you to move. And it has taken you to all of these places and people, and you're so open to God's movement in your life. And that's one thing, one of many things that
Mm.
I admire about your leadership. And so I'm really excited for you to speak into next gen marketplace leaders, especially for me personally, because I have a son, and because you and I talked about him,
Yes, we did.
who is a junior in college. And so I'm always thinking about his next steps, in entry level jobs, early career stuff with him. And I asked you for advice and you gave such great advice. And so I felt like the world needed to hear what you had to share with these younger leaders. And so, to get us started, but before we get us started, I would love for you to share something fun. Like, you said you love traveling and taking photos. Where do you think is the most picturesque in terms of your travels? Like, where have the most beautiful photos come from for you as you've
Oh,
traveled?
when I take photos, I tend to look at two things. I tend to look at like the bigger picture. And so I remember doing a like 12-day hike through Mont Blanc. It's a ridge of mountains in Switzerland, France, and Italy. And when my friend first proposed that, I thought, oh, I'm going to go kind of like around, right, the base of a mountain and just maybe kind of go up. You go up and down a mountain every day.
Oh.
And I remember one day that it took me almost 14 hours worse. It took me so long, like 12 or 40 hours to go up and down this one mountain. But when you get to the top of these mountains, these huge vistas open up before you. And I just remember there's this like beautiful plain and these like ridges in the ground from where the rivers and so on had traveled, like who knows, millennia ago. And then like these mountains behind it, and my sister just like a little speck just hiking her way down that, and that actually is still one of my favorite photos. Is this really beautiful vista? But then there's other times where I love looking really deep into things, right? Like those really close up shots of people that you meet, or of like the little small patterns of the world that God has created, that you can see just repeated over and over again everywhere you go. Even just, I actually end up taking a lot of pictures of like the ground that I walk on. This the texture of like where people have trod before, and or even like the ceilings of places I've been, like the Vatican. And um, so places that you don't maybe often look because you're looking straight ahead, but then when you like have a moment to pause and just look down or look up, then something else, just another view just opens up to you, and you want to look at those things like kind of just really deeply. Um, a lot of our museum people just kind of run past them. You're actually meant to sit down in front of a painting for like hours and look at like every aspect of it. We went to Mona Lisa recently and got a picture in front of that. And I think to myself, with the crowds around there, you don't get to do that. You don't get to sit and look at like every aspect of like the actual scenery that he's painted behind, Leonardo's painted behind her. And so having the luxury to like take that moment to look, I think is the other thing is, and I do it through a camera lens, but you can do it in so many different ways.
Yeah, that's so deep. I think it's such a well, first of all, I love that quote unquote, stop and smell the roses. You take time to interact with the space, to, survey landscapes and where you are, and and look at things from different angles. I love that. I think that's such a good way to lead as well, and just very wise in life, I think, as humans to do that, but also in leadership, to do that. I was just as you were talking about the mountains, and then the far away sort of view, and then also zooming in to look at patterns. I feel like that's also what leadership is, like good leadership kind of does that, like steps back and then zooms in and then looks up and looks down, and I think that's so beautiful. And and I'm sure like all the younger people you mentor, um, have picked that up from you. And so, speaking of mentorship, I know that you mentor officially and unofficially a lot of next generation leaders at Amazon and literally all over the world. I know um after I talked with my son about you, like he keeps asking me about you after. And so you're like mentoring him without even knowing. And I know that I'm sure there's so many young leaders like that all over the world. And so
Oh,
I'm
it's so
curious. Yeah, I know, so cute. Like, what are you seeing as some of the challenges these younger marketplace leaders are experiencing in the workplace?
I think the first challenge is that so many of them are having a hard time even getting into the workplace to begin with. We're seeing a rise in unemployment for that age group that we've not seen before. And part of it is just the way that technology is evolving and how it's changing what entry-level jobs look like for that next generation. And so I have such a heart to help Gen Z like find their first job and to like build a talent pipeline in order to upskill, maybe not even, it's not even necessarily upskilling, but almost like right skilling them for how the economy has changed and the opportunities that are open now are different than what was open before. And so you hear about a lot of kids in different countries like in Japan where they can't find a job and there's actually a term for making your job taking care of your parents because they can't
Oh,
actually find a way into the workforce, which is ironic because you know that there's a declining older population there and they desperately need new workers, and yet they don't have a way in. And so I just see this on one hand. And then I see that there's a desire for mentorship and they are missing that. Somehow they're missing people who can like pour into and help guide them in what it is that their, purpose and calling is, helping to figure out and call out of them, right? What their purpose is, and help them to form both professionally and spiritually. And so there's a great need for mentors. I'm hoping someone who's listening to this, who's not from the younger generation, but who's older, feels convicted that who am I mentoring? Who is it that I'm pouring into? Because they need that so very much. And I know that a lot of people think of this as whether it's the anxious generation or a generation that doesn't know how to work hard. I don't think that's true at all. You have to, though, find the thing that will make them want to engage, right? To feel like they're so passionate about this that they want to pour themselves into it. And so trying to figure that piece out, I think there's a lot of pressure to know like what is it I'm supposed to do. And it feels more competitive than it's ever been for that generation.
yeah. I love that you framed this challenge as like a systems challenge. Like it's like a
Yeah.
multifaceted challenge where, yeah, I think you're right. Like a lot of people can kind of label this generation a certain way. Um, and I love that you helped us see it from different angles, like you do with your photography, and in saying that, maybe as maybe the older adults listening to this webinar can think about how to take initiative. And like that really challenged me because when you said that, I was like, oh, wait. I can't think of anybody
Yeah, besides your son,
who,
who of your son's friends do you have a chance to
yeah,
influence?
yeah, exactly. And so that is my take, like one to do after this webinar for sure already. But
They will be both good.
yeah, yeah. And you said right skilling. I like that phrase. Can you talk more about what you mean by that as you interact with young people?
Again, we're just in this, what a lot of people think of as like a Kairos movement. And you see it also in the workplace, you see it in technology, that things are changing much more rapidly than they have in the past. We're just in that moment similar to when like the internet first came out, as AI is like, when now that we finally have an AI that actually everyone can use, it really accelerated the adoption of that particular technology. And so I just remember my little cousin telling me that as she's a junior in college, that she felt that AI was smarter than her. And
Wow.
so there's this sense of like AI is going to take my job, and there's a fear. But she hasn't even entered a workplace, and she already has a fear of AI obsolescence, as my friend James puts it. And so this group need to start like right away. They're already adapting to completely different technologies than were being used when they first started college. And so the ability to quickly like adapt to and embrace those things, and they are doing it like very naturally, right? Like my little cousin doesn't start a paper without AI, actually, doesn't start writing anything without AI. But you need to think more than just how do you use it. I think around AI, there's a few things that we're thinking about. We're thinking about the theology, the ethics of AI, how it's formed and shaped, and the narratives that feed into an AI, the data that goes into it, right? And so the system, to your point, like the systemic eco system of how AI is made and how it is starting to infiltrate every part of our society. Is there a role for you in that as a young person, right? And then as it then goes into being productized, right? Like where do you have experience and how can you take what probably feels very natural and easy to you in adopting technology and take that skill and showcase it as you're like interviewing and so on. There's a lot of companies that are grappling with, especially smaller companies, are grappling with how do I implement this? What does that look like? Especially if you're someone who doesn't have like the huge resources and investment in AI that Amazon does. And then, and I know people of all ages who are just making a whole career out of just helping companies implement AI. And then lastly, again, then as an end user, right? Like how are you using it to more effectively, not just efficiently, but effectively deliver things that maybe you couldn't do on your own. And so something like that is a good example of like where do you sit as a young person in those different levels of how AI is being developed? Where can you find a role in those things that bring value? And so again, it's not like, oh, I need to upskill my like programming, right? It's understanding, oh, if I'm vibe programming with AI, what does that look like? And how do I use that effectively in a way that shows a company that I can bring more value to the company and more productivity. And so if you can do, that's what I mean by right skilling. It's not just a, oh, I just need to learn how to like program really great, or oh, I just need to learn how to use this like one AI app, really well. It's more thinking about just the overall like where AI overall belongs in the industry that you're interested in and the work that you're interested in, and how do you use it at all different levels? How do you not just use it, but how do you become a part of how it's formed? And so, formed at your company, formed overall, what role do you play in that? And so then you're starting to make an impact that's not just in the, your one daily use of how you're using it to write something, but now you're actually helping shape the ways in which AI infiltrates our society, right? And now I think a lot of people talk about like in a spiritual sense, they talk about taking ground for God. And that sounds so like ephemeral. Like what is that? But in an area like AI, it's doing that, it's having thought leadership in this space, it's considering becoming an AI researcher, at some of the at biggest companies that are investing in AI. It's looking for the ability, like what's the right entryway into doing that? Who can you get to mentor you, right? Who's already doing that? What programs can you take outside of college, right? That could teach you how to do that because they probably haven't even started forming some of those classes yet. And so AI is one that's like on the top of everybody's mind, but it's an easy example for you to kind of understand. And the same thing can apply in other areas, right? If you're not in tech, but you love entertainment and media, what is like, or if you love e-commerce, understanding that e-commerce now, almost all e-commerce begins in social now. That's where the shopping journey begins for customers. It's no longer just, I'm going to go to Amazon. They do that, but most shopping journeys begin with hearing somebody's word of mouth recommendation or seeing somebody using some product, or maybe even now some ads, right, in social spaces. So understanding that kind of ecosystem, how can you already get skilled and experiment with maybe some small thing that you want to sell, in the social space. And then you have the luxury of doing that. Even like in my space, which is Amazon Books, as an author, you can experiment with and learn how to write your own book and get it self-published. All the tools are out there. If you want to be in the publishing industry, write a book and self-publish it, and then take that experience to show like your ability to fit into that industry and the experience that you've already created for yourself in that. And so again, you're looking at like understanding where it is you want to, like, at some sense, like you don't have to know everything about where you're going to go with your career, but like just your next thing. What's the next thing you're curious about that you feel like an overwhelming passion to know everything about that, right? And then just dive into it and find a way to basically experience it and to then be able to take that into like finding an actual like role or a job, a fit into the marketplace. Um, and it's interesting because it's not enough. The other thing is it's not enough just to have those skills. You also have to have the right like doorways open to you. And so a lot of young people don't understand what it is to like network, for instance, what it is to reach out to people blindly and just ask to connect, to ask for what in the past would have been thought of like as an informational interview, right? And so, but what you'll find is that if you do reach out to people, say you reach out to 10 people, I would at least one of those people, if you blind ask, go on LinkedIn, you just look up the companies you're interested in, look up roles, people in roles that you're interested in. If you just sort of blind ask 10 of those people, I bet you that a third, maybe half of those people would be happy to spend 20 minutes just talking with you. And so if all you did was just that, was just spend 20 minutes talking to, one or two people, every day, or maybe even every week, right? Because you're going to school, then you're going to build up a network over time. By the end of the year, you'll have 100 or more people now that you know in your industry who you've talked to and who you've shared what your dreams and passions and interests are. And when they hear of something, they'll think of you and be like, oh, this person I know has the ability to vibe code, or this person I know has like, she's so great and that she's already has her own little e-commerce site. And so like, this is someone that when someone's like, oh, I'm looking for someone, with like, I don't need someone really experienced, but I need someone with some level of knowledge of how to do this who can jump right in. Oh, that person, Yuli's son, he'd be perfect for this. So you kind of start laying the groundwork, right, for what your next role, and you're not depending on just some blind algorithm and application system at some company. Now you've built yourself a network of people and you've developed not just the hard skills of the job and industry you're interested in, but now you've also started to develop the soft skills. You also have the right skill, the soft skills for the work that you want to do. The ability to build relationships, to have emotional intelligence, um, to build strong networks, to collaborate. Those are all things that your next employer is going to be looking for.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's so many gems in what you just shared. I love that you said experience what you want to do. I feel like I love anything that ups our integrity, and I feel like that's such a move of
Mm,
integrity. Like whatever you're curious about, go and try to experience that. And see what you learn from it. I love that idea. I also definitely agree with the networking piece of it. I don't think we can underscore that one enough.
mm,
I empathize with younger leaders who find networking intimidating, or tiring, or they're just like, why do I have to do this? Like, I empathize with that. I used to be one of those, but I will say, I think I think it's like literally all of my opportunities came from a network connection. Like the
mm,
invitations from somebody to say, "Hey, do you want to join us for this?" Or "We would love to recruit you for this position." And it was literally all
mm,
through people I knew. And even now, like the smaller big invitations to write something for somebody's blog, or to be a expert on somebody's other in somebody's center or whatever, all of those come from invitations as well. So I think that's so key that you highlighted that for us all, and especially younger leaders, to reach out. And I agree, I feel like people, there will definitely be people who say yes to your request to just
mm.
talk. And I like that 20-minute situation that you put out there, because if I heard 20 minutes, I'd be like, "Oh, yeah, that's doable for me."
No, it's true. There's a book
Yeah.
called 20 Minute Networking that
Oh,
when I read it, I was like, this is
okay.
brilliant. Because 20 minutes is just enough,
Yeah,
right? Just enough for you to share a little bit of who you are, just enough for you to find out a little bit of who they are, for you to ask a
yeah,
couple of deep questions. And then you close it by just saying, like, one, thank you, but two, like, two things that I always say you should ask at the end of networking is, who else do you think I should talk to? Right? So you're broadening your network further. And hopefully they have like at that moment they're top of mind of what it is that you're looking for. And so they're looking for someone who can help you with that. And then two, how can you help them? And so a lot of times they'll say nothing, but at some point down the line, they'll remember, oh, I remember that Yuli has like this skill set or has insight about this or is connected to this person, and they'll reach back out to you. And so I think a lot of what's intimidating about networking is this sense almost of like, oh, am taking something without giving back, there's a sense of like I owe something, or is there going to be some sort of like reciprocity that like, I need to like step up to, and so this sense of like I have nothing to bring, right? It's a long-term relationship that you're building. You're not this isn't a one-time meet, right? You're not just going on like a date and then deciding, oh, like them or don't like them, or you're not just swiping left and right. You are actually building relationships for the long term. That is the hope, especially if you're looking to meet with someone who's in an industry you're interested in, right? You want that to be a long-term relationship. And so down the line, as the relationship develops, there will be opportunities to, build like the kind of the back and forth. So don't be afraid that like, oh, well, are they going to spend time with me? They're not going to get anything out of it. They're going to get out of it meeting someone amazing, one, right? And someone that'll probably energize them, make them think a little bit differently about their own jobs, and make them ask good questions. But then long term, they're going to have hopefully a relationship with you. And if they start to get invested in you and then you start to grow, like that will be so rewarding for them. That alone will be rewarding. But then now, like, you never know when you might be able to help them. And so I
Yeah.
think that you have to think long term as you're thinking about networks and building your network. And you're right, Julie. The last three jobs I had, and including one I'm going to next, have all been through networking.
Yeah, I know. It's the power of network. We've lived
Hmm.
it as older people.
Yeah, right. We have. And so
Oh,
I would say too, like the other thing about networking is that, you know, there's a sense that you need to network with like like in a certain direction almost.
yeah.
Like you want to meet with, but the thing is, you actually want to meet with people like in all directions, if that makes sense. Again,
Mm,
similar to what we talked about at the very beginning, there's people that are much senior than you. Those will be the most intimidating people to reach out to. When I was working in the very first part of my career, one of the things that I wish I had done more of was reach out to our very top leaders, our CEO, our VP, folks that seem so out of reach. But if you ask them with enough lead time, they will give you a little time if you give them like a reason, right? Like, but you'll find that they would be willing to meet with you for 20 minutes if you're willing to do that in like 3 months, right? In 6 months. And
yeah.
so it's just a matter of time in that case. And so I wish I'd reached out to more people at higher levels of the business. And not even in my own company, like in adjacent companies or adjacent industries as well. And then and then you want to meet with like your peers, right? And those around you, understanding like what they're doing, what they're interested in. That's actually where you'll probably find the most collaboration is among your peers, people around you. And then again, you should constantly be investing in like the next, level, like people coming up behind you. So opening yourself up for opportunities for them to network with you and to like reach out to you to meet with those folks. And so if you're doing this right, then it's, up sideways and down as you're networking. And in a spiritual sense, you would maybe call that discipleship, right?
Mm,
Discipleship is a little different, but it's a similar, I think it's a similar thing. In discipleship, you have people who are mentoring you, spiritually mentoring you, right? Spiritual mothers and fathers. And then you have your peer group who are like the people you're running the race with, right? I'm so fortunate that like Julie and I are like running this race together.
yeah.
We can like spur each other on and we can sharpen each other like iron to iron, right?
Yeah.
And then you're looking for those that you want to bring up as younger, spiritual leaders that you're helping to form, those that you're discipling. So it's very similar, but you should be doing this in all parts of your life. And you might hear this term like multimodal. That's part of like what that is being able to be integral, like to have integrity, be operating the same way in all different parts of your life. And then pursuing all those things really hard, right? And so like you're able to and context switch between, when you're networking in a work context, when you're discipling in a spiritual context, and then when you're like maybe even like out in the community being generous, right, with your time. Like all those things are different modalities of how you operate as a person, as a professional, as part of the community. And those things should all be connected. Those things should all be the same across the board. And that's what I mean by
Yeah.
integrity.
That's so good. I love that you're calling the younger leaders to live an integrated life across all the different spheres and modalities, as you said. And I love that you mentioned a little while ago that networking and, kind of putting yourself out there, up, down, sideways, can grow our soft skills, and these are skills that often are shaped through relationships. And,
Mhm.
there is no, um, like if you have the chance to work on these soft skills early in your life, that is such a gift. And I love that you are encouraging younger leaders to do that now. Like do it now while you're in college. Like for me, I never
Yes,
heard of about
yes.
soft skills until I was like in my 30s or something.
Well, and it's
So
something that AI can't replace, right?
yeah,
Like, AI does not have that kind of emotional intelligence
yeah,
or
so true.
spiritual intelligence. It also does not have that kind of spiritual intelligence.
Yeah, that's so true. Um, and Okay, so you talked about how you said when you first started working, you wished you sort of reached out to those at the very top tier of your company. Um, let's imagine, that there is somebody who just got their first job, like first full-time job outside of graduating college. What what's like my I don't know, two or three pieces of advice that you would share with this
Mm,
person?
yeah. Oh, that's so good. Um, so one, as you move forward in your career, when you first begin, you're gonna say yes way more than almost never say no. Like you're gonna say yes. So as doors open, like be open to saying yes. It may sound like, oh, that's not a job I want to do. But what if that job were to bring you like in contact with someone that could have an influence and impact and who could mentor you through the rest of your career? So I'll give you an example. A friend of mine was a White House intern. And there was a job in the White House. There used to be a job at in-house that was really thankless. It felt really thankless. And the job was to collect all the press clippings for the day and then to like present that to different, leaders at the White House. And like nobody wanted to do this job. It sounds really boring and like, very like tactical and like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like it doesn't sound strategic in any way. And so it wasn't sexy. But because he took on this job, he was giving, in essence, he was giving press briefings to the president. And so he was collecting like all the press, and then he would like share like the top news of the day with the president of the United States.
Wow.
Okay. So he ended up being a running partner for that president. Like they would go running together.
Wow. Oh my gosh, so fun.
So, but think about if he said no, like, oh, that job doesn't sound like it's for me. I want a more, important job,
Yeah.
right? And so in the beginning of your career, you're going to say yes a lot more than you're going to say no. But at some point, you have to make the switch to saying no more than you say yes. Because at some point, you'll be bombarded with opportunities. And for you to really key in on God's best for you, instead of saying yes to all the good things, things will be good. Instead of saying yes to all the good things, you're going to have to say no to a lot of good things so that you can say a really big yes to the great things of God. And so you have to learn to make that switch at some point in your career, probably one or two jobs in. You're going to have to learn to make that switch in your daily job to be able to set boundaries on what is important and prioritizing those big rocks, as we call them, first before you say yes to the little things that want to slip in between everything. And what will often happen is that whatever is loudest will seem most important. Whoever knocks on your door the most, whatever thing that your boss says their leader is shouting for, right, will seem most important at the moment. But again, when you take a big step back and you look at those things, you realize, whoa, those things that everyone was demanding right then actually wasn't that important. Didn't make a difference in the decisions and directions of the company. But this other thing over here really did. And I wish I'd spent more time on that, And so I think there's that piece of it. The pursuing your curiosity, you should continue to do that through the rest of your life and be open to moving around. I wish I had moved around more often earlier in my career. It's easier to move earlier in career. And so pursuing your curiosity early on, like, oh, I wonder how this part of the business works. I wonder how this part of the business works. As you collect those different experiences, do it as fast as you can. Only spend maybe 1 or 2 years early on in your career in any one role. And then at some point, people will start looking at you and going like, I'm looking for someone who has, like in my case, one of the last jobs I was in, my boss was looking for someone who had experience in doing product marketing, working in social, who was able to work cross-functionally across different parts of the business, who had done both strategic and tactical work, working with both business and consumer. And I've worked long enough I've done almost every role in marketing. And so
Wow.
when she found me, she was like, "You're like a unicorn." Because of just the like breadth of experience. And you'll learn like for yourself whether you're meant to be a generalist, which is what I am, right? I like to take a broad view of the business, have a little bit of experience everywhere, or whether you are someone who's a specialist, you go deep into one thing, right? But you'll know everything about that one thing. And in both cases, you want to, again, like move very quickly between different aspects of whatever it is that you're interested in. So you can learn all parts, especially like in a specialty, you will learn all parts of this one thing. Or as a generalist, I want to learn like all parts of different parts of the business across this way, right? And so you want to do that as fast as possible early on in your career. And that positions you then that you now have this like wealth of experience in many different aspects that you can bring. And then you've been networking, right, with leaders in your business and other businesses. And then as they hear of roles, they'll know that, oh, you have this range of experiences. Your name will come to mind when someone comes to them and be like, hey, do you know someone who can do these three things? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, like Mary Rose has done like all three of those things. And it doesn't matter that you only did it for like a year. It's the fact that you have experience in doing that. Like just stay long enough to make an impact, but then look for the next place you're going to make an impact. And it usually takes at least a year to make an impact. It takes at least 6 months to know what you're doing. I mean, that's the other thing I would tell someone who's just starting is you're going to feel like you're failing for like the first
Mm.
few months because you don't know what you're doing yet. Right. I do. I feel the same way whenever I start a new job. And
Same.
I had to remind myself, I was like, oh yeah, I remember now what this feels like. Like I used to know everything and now I know nothing.
Yeah.
And we used to have a saying in our company that like it'll feel at first every day like you're gonna get fired. That could be. I feel like you're gonna get fired every day. I can't tell you the number of people that when I like opened up to them that kind of that vulnerable way, like, man, I feel like I'm failing, I'm gonna get fired. They'll be like, oh my gosh, I feel the same way too. You know,
Wow.
so
Yeah.
you'd be surprised 'cause that's where imposter syndrome comes from. Is that sense of like I'm failing, and so everyone expects me to do really well, and I have to like put up this front that I like know everything I know what I'm doing. And what I would say is don't fake it. Like people would say like fake it till you make it. I truly believe that you should not do that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like go to your boss and be like I don't know what I'm doing. What I am saying is, hey, I'm thinking about doing it this way. Is this the right way of doing it? Try it and then learn, like, oh, that didn't work. Okay, fine. Like, I'm going to find some other way of doing it, right? What your boss is looking for is the proactivity, the ability to find solutions and to experiment and to try things until you figure out what works, right? It's when you come to your boss and you're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm doing. I just, sucked at this. Tell me what to do. Like, no boss actually wants that. They're looking for
Yeah.
someone with high ownership, proactivity, who's able to make things happen. And there is expectation that you're going to fail. We all, when you think about failure as something didn't work, like that happens to all of us on a daily basis. I have things that didn't work, but we're okay with that because the 1 out of 10 things that work helped me to double my results, right? And
Yeah.
so the ability to, you know, understand that like you're going to feel like you're failing at first, stick it out. It'll take you at least 6 months before you feel like an expert, at least a year before you can make a difference, sometimes 2 years. The longer you're like the higher up you go in your career, the longer it takes, maybe 2 years, 3 years to make a difference. And so as you at the beginning of your career you move around a lot. Later on in your career you'll become a little bit more stable, you'll stay longer because it takes longer to make an impact, right? And at some point you might become like the CEO or CMO. You'll reach that like pinnacle role that you never expected to get to or that you were shooting for the whole time. And you might like stay in that for a long time because you found like just the right place and you just love it. And as long as you're making a difference, you'll stay there. It's like, how long do you stay at a job? Right. I think that's something that people ask. And I would say that you should stay at a job as long as you feel like you're making a difference and you're growing. If you find that you no longer want to wake up in the morning and go to work, you're going to work later and later in the day, where you're kind of spacing out in the middle of your day, where you feel like there's more pain than joy, because there's always going to be a mix, but where there's more pain and joy in the work that you do, where there's more conflict and that it's not getting resolved, then, that's when you can maybe start thinking about, okay, it's a time for the next thing.
Mm. Oh my gosh, this is so good. This is good for all ages. Like anyone listening in, anybody in the workforce, working anywhere in ministry or marketplace. I wish I had a mentor like you when I was younger.
Mm,
Just hearing you speak, I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. I should do that now, kind of thing. And so I am curious to also ask. So let's pretend this entry level worker has now reached a stage in their career where they want to get promoted. They are
mm,
an Asian American um, person and they want to get promoted. What's your advice around promotions?
mm. So there's a couple of things you need to do well if you want to get promoted. One, at that point in your networking, you should have sponsors. There's a difference between a mentor and a sponsor that a lot of people, when they first start, just don't know. Like I didn't know when I first started. And so I'm like pursuing relationships with people who are senior in the business. And this is a case where you need people who are senior in the business or at least have an influence on people who are hiring in the business. And what you're looking for is someone who understands a little bit of what you do, enough to know the impact of what you do, that then want to support you in growing your career and who are in the right rooms when decisions are being made um, around jobs and roles and assignments. And so a sponsor is someone who's in the room when you're not and can basically like promote you or like put forth your name for a promotion or for, a certain role and so on. So you need somebody like you need people like that. Who you have built relationships with, who you have helped. These could be people that you've actually have worked under in the past, a couple levels up, who knows the quality of your work. It could be someone that used to be a mentor, but now have become a sponsor, because now they're in the right rooms or they know enough of your work that they're not just coaching you how to do it, but now they have experience or even benefited from like the work that you've done.
Yeah.
Um, and it could even just be someone for who, for whatever reason, feels invested in you. It could be someone, even it could be someone who's spiritually discipling you, but then also has, professional connections and network, right? They might, again, like know you spiritually, are willing to sponsor you professionally.
Yeah.
And so there's all kinds of people in your life who can be a sponsor. But
Yeah.
you need somebody like that. You need someone who's going to be in the room and will put your name forward when the question comes out, who should be hired for this or who should get promoted.
Mhm.
Um, and then, so you have like that kind of like, support behind you, including like your own boss, right? Your own boss is kind of a little bit of a mini sponsor, but usually a sponsor is someone out, not your boss, usually someone else who's in the room, right? Some of those decisions your boss will get cut out of, like they won't even be in the room, right? When they do talent reviews, oftentimes they review everybody at one level and then they ask all those people to leave. And then they review at the next level and they ask all those people to leave. So who's left in the room, right? Who can speak for you, who knows your work as all those different levels are leaving. That's why you need a network a few levels up your organization. Um, and then and then I know that yes, you have to do excellent work, but people have to know that you're doing excellent work. And as
Yeah.
Asian Americans, we find it really hard because we want to be so humble to share what it is that we're doing. But you have to create mechanisms and vehicles for communicating the work that you're doing. And it's not about you. At that point, what you're talking about isn't, oh, I'm so great. What you're talking about is my work has this impact
Mhm.
because I did because of what I did in Amazon these last 2 years. I was able to take our event business from something where our bosses were like, should we even do this? At that point, it was like a 2.7 billion dollar business. And in about 2 years, I grew it to $4.5 billion.
Wow.
And we answered that question definitively. Yes, we should do these because it's making such a big difference and it's helping us close the gap to our numbers. And
Yeah.
so what I talk about then, though, isn't like, oh, I did that. What I talk about is that the impact that we had, the numbers that we are now delivering, the ways in which we were able to do that. And if I talk about anyone, I actually talk about the people around me who are part of my team, who I've seen deliver, who really made a difference. You know, the ability to lift other people up is actually part of one of the joys of being a leader, is growing and developing and lifting other leaders up and giving credit where it's due to those people. And when you do that, they're going to want to work with you. They're going to want to put even more into it. And then your results will continue to grow even bit more. And so I think that again, it's like a continual investment in like your own self in terms of like skills and development, but it's an investment in other people and their skills and development and you don't lift yourself up, you lift your results up, but then you lift other people up. And
Mhm.
so as you're like doing that as a leader, then people start to see that you're strategic, that you have the ability to develop people and to inspire, motivate people to deliver. These are all skills that they're looking for in someone they want to promote.
Mhm.
And then they
Yeah.
see that your communications are improving. You're able to communicate with all different levels of leadership. As you're telling about what your results are, you want to get in front of higher and higher levels of leaders. You want to be in the room when some of those discussions are happening. You should be asking your boss, like, what meetings can I join? Where can I? One of my VPs once gave me advice that she was like, you have all the skills needed to get promoted, but you just need more context. You just need to understand
Mm.
how what you're doing impacts the rest of the business. And that means you need to be in the room, in the discussions, talking to, networking with people that maybe you don't usually do. You want a wider context of the whole business. And so
Yeah.
um, if there's things that you like feel like are blocking your promotion, like that's when you can like talk to your boss, talk to, people who know you, talk to your mentors, right? Not your sponsors, like your mentors, like what's blocking like me from being promoted? Like what do I need to work on? And so that's where you like put a plan together. And a lot of times it's just raising your hand, by the way. A lot of times it's just letting people know, hey, I'm interested in moving further in this direction, and then you want to put a plan together and make sure that you work that plan. A lot of it's going to be up to you. No one's going to like on your behalf create a plan to get you promoted.
Yeah.
You have to create the plan to get you promoted. As a matter of fact, you will often write the promotion doc. You'll write
Oh.
for someone because they'll look for people to like kind of give recommendations of like why you should be promoted. The best thing you can do is write that for that person to make it easy for them to help you get promoted. So you own your promotion.
Yeah. I love that you're encouraging all of us and younger leaders, especially to take initiative and to take ownership, to reach out, to just move forward. And even though it might be a little bit scary at first, actually, like it's kind of like anything you practice or kind of do over and over again.
Hmm.
It's like facing a fear.
Yeah,
I used to be scared of flying, but I travel so much now that it's just like nothing. Like the fear went away
yeah,
because it's the constant exposure. And so I feel like it's similar to that where you once you start moving forward more and more and more and you um initiate and then that first initiation is scary. The second time it's less actually. And the more you do it, it's like you're practicing how to do it better. It gets less scary and you become more resilient as an employee. And
absolutely.
so, yeah, and raising that
It was
hand the first time, I know it's scary, but just keep on doing it. And then soon after a while, you'll be like, oh, yeah, me. And it's just like if somebody says no, you're like, okay, cool, I'll raise it again next time. And so you
that's
want
right.
to build up
That's
that
right. That's right.
resilience. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and don't get discouraged if it's no the first time. Like just ask, okay, well, why is it no? What do I need to change? Like, or what needs to be different? And it might be to change bosses or jobs
Yeah.
or companies. That will also sometimes happen. That's okay. You learn. The sooner you can learn that, the better, so that you're not wasting your time.
Yes.
And if you're thinking to yourself, like, how do I get a mentor? How do I get a sponsor? One of the best ways is to ask people around you. Like, I want to learn this, or I want to know that, or I want to move into here. Who do you know? So getting a referral, a recommendation, right? Getting someone introducing you to someone else is actually one of the best ways to get like a sponsor or a mentor. Because you might not even know, like, I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what, like, because I don't know how to do this, but there's probably no one around me that is teaching me this. Like, where do I find that person? And so you just ask, somebody you trust or someone you know like, do you know anyone? So again, like this is why early on in your career, build that network. It comes in so valuable in so many different ways. Um,
So true. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool. I would love, I know looking at your background, there's a ton of books, and I feel like a lot of really great leaders I know are always reading something. And I would love to have you share a couple of book recommendations for younger leaders out there. Like, what were some really formative books for you early on in your career?
oh gosh, so early on, I don't even remember what I read back then. But the books I recommend that everybody reads now is
Mhm.
I always recommend, and this is not just for young people, but I always recommend reading Difficult Conversations. One, it's based on research that a team did, and what it basically teaches you is the three types of conversations that you're having whenever you talk to anybody. There's the facts of what it is you're talking about, as much as those can be objective, right? When we all know we all see things differently. So you're trying to explain like your perception of the facts and seeing if it aligns up with what the other person is seeing as reality. Right. Just there alone, if you can figure out what's different and how you're perceiving things can be so valuable. And then two, there's a conversation you're having around how you're feeling. And so a lot of times when you have difficult conversation, you end up telling the other person, this is how you're like, you want to tell them, this is how I'm feeling because of the facts or because of what, of what happened. And the other person may never even realize the impact that they had on you. So it builds empathy basically, and it builds rapport, right? It opens up a level of vulnerability that allows for the kind of sharing that can lead to reconciliation. And then the last kind of conversation you're having is a conversation around identity. And this is where often goes wrong in a difficult conversation because you'll tell the other person, like, well, I saw that, I saw that you said something that wasn't right. And then you jump to, so you're a liar. And so that's not going to go over well, right? Because now you've attacked their identity.
Right.
So so you need to be really careful because all you really like you only know yourself really, right? And so and so if you can have a smart conversation at those three levels, right? You can have a healthy conversation, an open, vulnerable conversation with humility at all three of those levels in a way that doesn't make the other people feel attacked, then you can resolve issues. You can have reconciliation. You can make a stand for who you are and what you believe in a way that other people, even if they don't agree with you, will at least understand. And right now in our society, we've lost the ability to agree to disagree. We've lost the ability to be able to hold two different viewpoints at the same time. We feel like we can only have one viewpoint and we have to vehemently like reject the other versus, oh, like there's elements of both that I can weigh and understand and take value from and hold those two things in tension with each other at the same time. And so being able to have those kind of difficult conversations will help you learn how to do that. And that book will help you to learn how to have difficult conversations in a healthy way. And these three different levels of conversation that you're having really. And then another book that I think is really great for young people as they're going into their work and to understand like what that work is for is The Sacredness of Secular Work by Jordan Rayner. As you're doing your work itself, then I think about discipleship. And there's two discipleship books from friends I know. One is Equipped by Peter Sakuhara. Um, he is a past like tech product like marketing kind of guy, but then he also leads a congregation at in Mount Carmel in Israel. So
Right.
like amazing. He's very amazing multimodal leader, right? Both in business and spiritually. And he wrote a book called Equip that gives you like basically 52 devotions, like a devotion a week that's related to how you think about and disciple yourself for work and to equip yourself for as a disciple in the workplace. And then another discipleship book is Belonging 2.0 by my friend Joanna that she wrote recently. And again, it's all about like how to grow deeper in your relationship and walk with God, but with a work context as well. And so there used to not be that many books out there around like how do you live your life well in a work context as a spiritual believer. But now you have these wonderful books that will help guide you in how to do that.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. I'm going to list, excuse me, those books for anyone who might be interested in purchasing them, perhaps through Amazon, which is where I go to get my
Thank you.
books. And I actually have not read those last two books that you mentioned. So I'm going to go ahead and purchase those for myself as well. But yeah, the difficult conversations piece, I totally agree. There's a lot of difficult people at work. And so if you know how to navigate them early on, that will be bonus for sure. Okay, Mimi, last question for you. If you could share one leadership lesson with your younger self, what would that be? What would you want your younger self to know now that you've experienced life and you're on this other side?
Mhm. I remember at one point in my career, maybe mid career, still somewhat early, that I was on a call with my boss and I said something just kind of like on the side to him. And he was like, speak up, like, like say it to everybody. Like, why are you only saying it to me? Um, and that's something that I've taken with me, I think, ever since is that ability to like have a strong voice, have something worth saying, but then be able to vocalize that strongly and have a point of view. A lot of times that's what people are looking for is like your point of view, your thought leadership, be able to back up why you think the way you do. And if you feel uncomfortable, and I was early on in my career uncomfortable speaking in front of crowds. Like I remember when I was a kid, I would like literally shake if I had to like stand in front of my class.
Mm.
And the way to get over that is to get up, stand, and talk in front of whoever. The way to get over it, like you said earlier, is to like I remember one of my first jobs out of college, I had to present all the time because I had a team. So I had to get up and like lead like meetings and like be the one to present and lead the team. And when you do that enough, it starts to feel really, really comfortable.
Mhm.
And so I think just again, like exercising out those fears um, in every part of your life, whatever they may be. And in my case, it was about speaking up. But then again, like if I could have told myself, hey, earlier on in your career, you should have a point of view and be able to express and speak for like why you think the way you do, and then be open to like change. I think the other thing that one of my bosses says all the time is like be radically dissatisfied. This is day one thinking for Amazon. It's also first principles thinking, which is what a lot of like top CEOs and leaders do. Is called first principle thinking. There's mental models basically in terms of like how you can operate, and there's whole books on mental models as well. But one of those models is first principle thinking, which is kind of like take away all the extra, all the unnecessary thing, boil it down to like the primary thing, and kind of like start from scratch. If you could start all over again, right? Then what would that look like, and how would you operate differently because of that? And now you're constantly recreating, reinventing, basically, and you're like lifting things to a higher bar, a higher standard, and you may be able to solve things in ways that you've never had before. So being radically dissatisfied, being willing to like, you know, think afresh and like to recreate and rebuild in new ways. And this is what God calls having a new wineskin, right? Like
Mm.
old wine can't go into old wineskin. What's gotten you so far won't get you any further. So you have to be willing to like throw away things that may seem really valuable, but which aren't going to get you to the next stage of what you need to do or what you need to get to, and then to build something new. Build
Yeah.
whatever that new wineskin is, and just make sure that when you do that, that you're building with God. When I lead our team, our Christians at Amazon team, the two things I tell them all the time, and I think this applies to your whole career, is one, love the Lord your God with all your heart and soul and mind. And you might be asking yourself, well, what does that have to do with work? But it puts work in its right place.
Mm.
Work is not what you love first, right? When you think about what the goal is, right? I think about like what the goal is of Christians at Amazon. The goal is God Himself. Jesus Himself is the goal of that whole organization. It's the pursuit of Jesus. And that actually is the goal of like your whole life, including your work. Your work is actually a way in which you're pursuing Jesus. I mean, think you can meditate on that for yourself, but think about like what does that really mean, right? And then two, I tell people fear God to such an extent that you would not make a move without Him. Be like the Israelites in the desert, just following the cloud by day, fire by night. When God lifts up from the tabernacle, then it's time for you to move. And so, are you radically obedient to the extent that you'll stay when He tells you to stay, and you'll move when He tells you to move, even if you like stay, even if you hate your job because there's something that God needs you to accomplish, or maybe there's someone in your work that He wants you to reach, or to even lift up and move, even if you're at the top of your job, you're about to get promoted and God's like, go do something else. Are you willing to like have a radical level of obedience? That's what I mean when I say have such a fear of God that you're not willing to move without Him. But that and that you are you willing to move when He moves though? So
Mm.
I think those are things that I wish I learned earlier on.
Oh my gosh, I don't want this conversation to end because I feel like every question I ask, there's something more amazing and just it goes deeper
That's
and
so
deeper.
good.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mimi, for sharing all of your experiences and wisdom with all of us. I think definitely next gen marketplace leaders can benefit greatly from this conversation, but also leaders of all generations, of all ages. I love that you talked about leadership renewal. I love leadership renewal as well. And just
Mhm.
renewing ourselves in different seasons of our lives as leaders, I think is really, really important. So we don't stay stagnant, and that we're continuing to grow, which is super
For
important.
sure.
And so, yeah, I think
Mhm.
that's so relevant for all of us in any age, any season of our career. And so, it's a really great place to end this conversation. And I just want to thank you again for joining us and for taking the time to share with us, because I know that you are busy. You're going through your own career journey, and there's a lot going on. So for you to take the time to share what you've learned, I think is so generous. It's so generous. And so we really appreciate you.
Mhm.
And if you loved this conversation, don't, it's going to be recorded and it'll be on our website. So you can check it out there. And then if you are curious about future webinars, we have two coming up the week after Thanksgiving, one day after the other. So it's going to be an exciting week, y'all. Like you're, we're going to have a spiritual director on for one of those, and then really the next day we're going to have two children's authors on to talk
Oh,
about
fun.
their children's book. So be ready for those. You'll see some of the promos on social media, but for now, Mimi, thanks again. We will keep in touch, and I hope that you all listening in were blessed and that y'all have a really good holiday coming up. All right, take care. Bye.
Thank you.